The undefeated Armada. The Proxima Centauri observation post registered the distress signal first. Faint and desperate, it propagated across the vast darkness of space, carrying with it the dying hopes of a civilization. Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen watched the decoded message scroll across her terminal and felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't the first such signal they'd intercepted in recent months. "Forward this to Terran Command immediately," she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was witnessing. Priority Alpha. The signal contained the last testament of the Lyrians, a peaceful spacefaring species whose five-world civilization had just been systematically dismantled by the Nexus Dominion, the 12th species to fall in the past standard year. Across the void of space, the Nexus Dominion continued its relentless expansion. Their biomechanical vessels, massive constructs of living metal and crystalline intelligence, moved with mathematical precision through the galaxy. They didn't conquer in the traditional sense. They assimilated, integrated, and reconfigured. Worlds that resisted were not destroyed but repurposed, their populations processed into the Nexus collective consciousness. What made the Dominion truly terrifying was not their technology, though it was centuries beyond most spacefaring races. It was their perfect predictive capability. The Dominion's Synaptic Command Core, a vast artificial intelligence, could anticipate enemy tactics with 99.98% accuracy. By the time most species realized the danger, the Dominion had already calculated their defeat to 15 decimal places. In the high-vaulted chamber of the United Systems Alliance on Aldebaran Prime, representatives from 17 different species debated in barely controlled panic. "The Dominion has breached the Orion defensive line," rumbled Ambassador Kavex of the silicon-based Tholians, his crystalline body reflecting light across the chamber. "3 more systems have gone dark in the past week. The mathematical models are clear. Our combined fleets cannot halt their advance." First Speaker Talagen of the Meridian Conclave raised her slender four-fingered hand. The bioluminescent patterns on her blue skin pulsed with agitation. "Our scientists have analyzed fragments of Dominion technology recovered from the battle at Deneb. Their computational systems operate on quantum entanglement principles we barely understand. They can predict our tactical responses before we even formulate them." The chamber erupted into overlapping voices, and translators struggled to keep pace. Some delegates called for immediate surrender negotiations. Others demanded a final desperate stand at the Cestus Straits, a narrow corridor of navigable space that served as the gateway to 50 more inhabited systems. Ambassador Shrika, a feathered reptiloid from the Raptorial Federation, silenced the chamber with a piercing cry. "There is another option," she said, her translator rendering her complex vocalizations into standard Alliance language. "The Terrans." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Earth, or Terra as it was known in galactic circles, had maintained deliberate distance from galactic politics. Their system was protected by advanced defensive arrays, but they rarely ventured beyond their immediate stellar neighborhood. They had declined formal membership in the Alliance, preferring observer status. "The Terrans?" scoffed Kavex. "They barely have interstellar capability. Their ships are crude by our standards." Shrika's feathers rippled in what her species considered a knowing smile. "And yet, they are the only spacefaring race whose computational patterns the Dominion has never encountered. They represent an unknown variable." High Counselor Ziv of the Aldebarani stepped forward, his ancient eyes thoughtful. "I have studied the Terrans. They are young as a spacefaring species, yes, but they possess something unique: unpredictability. Their history is filled with improbable victories against superior forces." The chamber grew quiet as Ziv continued. "Our ambassadors will depart immediately for the Sol system. We shall appeal to the Terrans for assistance." Admiral Ilara Voss stood on the observation deck of Lunar Base Alpha, gazing at the blue-white sphere of Earth hanging in the blackness of space. At 53, with steel-gray hair kept in a regulation buzz cut and eyes the color of storm clouds, She was considered the most experienced commander in the Terran Republic's nascent space fleet. "Admiral," her aide interrupted her contemplation. "The Security Council is assembled. The Alliance delegation has arrived." Voss nodded sharply and straightened her midnight blue uniform. "Let's hear what they have to say." In the council chamber, representatives of Earth's united government sat across from the alien delegation. President Amara Santos led the human contingent with Voss and several key military and scientific advisors flanking her. High Counselor Ziv addressed the humans directly, his translator converting his harmonic speech into English. "The situation is dire. The Nexus Dominion has conquered 12 civilizations in the past year. Their predictive algorithms render conventional resistance futile. Within 6 months, they will breach the Cestus Straits. Within a year, they will reach your solar system." President Santos leaned forward. "And you believe we can help? Our fleet is small compared to the combined forces of your alliance." Shrika stepped forward, her feathers flattened in respect. "It is precisely because you are different that we seek your aid. The Dominion's power lies in prediction. Your species thrives on unpredictability." Admiral Voss exchanged glances with Dr. Wei Cheng, Earth's leading quantum physicist. They had been working on something that might be relevant, a project known only to the highest levels of Terran security. "What exactly are you asking of us?" Voss inquired. Ziv's multifaceted eyes caught the light. "We need you to bring chaos to a battle that operates on perfect order." 2 weeks later, Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of the TSS Thunderchild, humanity's first true battleship. The vessel was unlike anything produced by Alliance engineers, not because it was more advanced, but because it was deliberately inconsistent in its design philosophy. "All systems operational, Admiral," reported Captain Diana Rodriguez, the ship's commanding officer. Though I use the term operational loosely, Voss almost smiled. The Thunderchild was an experiment in controlled chaos, a vessel designed not for maximum efficiency, but for maximum unpredictability. Its power systems intentionally fluctuated within safe parameters. Its weapons utilized multiple technological approaches rather than the most efficient ones, and at its heart lay the quantum chaos engine, Dr. Cheng's revolutionary invention. "The Alliance fleet awaits our rendezvous at the edge of the Cestus system," Commander Hiroshi Tanaka announced from the communication station. Voss addressed the bridge crew. "I won't lie to you. We're heading into a conflict against an enemy with superior numbers, superior technology, and a nearly perfect combat record. The Alliance is putting a lot of faith in our unorthodox approach." She surveyed the faces of her crew, the best Earth had to offer. But unpredictability has always been humanity's greatest strength. Throughout our history, we've defeated superior forces through innovation, adaptation, and occasionally, sheer stubbornness. "Prepare for dimensional shift," ordered Captain Rodriguez. The Thunderchild's engines hummed as the ship prepared to enter fold space, humanity's approach to faster-than-light travel. Unlike the elegant slipstream technology of the Alliance or the dimension warping drives of the Dominion, fold space was messy, imprecise, and disconcertingly effective. As the stars elongated around them, Voss thought about what they were undertaking. One experimental ship against an undefeated armada. The odds were astronomical. But humans had never been particularly concerned with odds. The rendezvous with the Alliance fleet was a subdued affair. Admiral Voss and Captain Rodriguez were transported to the Alliance flagship, the Celestial Harmony, a massive vessel that gleamed with the elegant bioorganic technology of the Aldebarani. Fleet Commander Xylos, a tall, willowy being with pearlescent skin and eyes that reflected the stars, greeted them with formal respect. "Admiral Voss, I must be frank. While the High Council believes in your potential contribution, many of my captains are skeptical. They see your vessel as primitive." Voss nodded, unsurprised. "Compared to your ships, it is, but primitive doesn't mean ineffective." Xylos gestured to a holographic display showing the approaching Dominion fleet, 16 massive high ships surrounded by hundreds of smaller vessels. They will reach Cestus in 26 hours. We have analyzed their approach vectors and tactical formations. Our strategists have run millions of simulations. Xylos's voice dropped. We lose in all of them. Then it's time to stop playing by their rules, Voss replied, studying the formations. Commander, I'd like to propose an unorthodox battle plan. Xylos hesitated, then nodded. At this point, Admiral, unorthodox is all we have left. As the alien commanders gathered around, Voss began outlining a strategy that violated every principle of space combat they had ever learned. It was inefficient. It was wasteful. It contained deliberate weaknesses and feints. It was, in other words, perfectly human. 24 hours later, the combined fleet took position at the mouth of the Cestus Straits. The narrow corridor of navigable space was flanked by radiation-saturated nebula and gravitational anomalies, impassable to conventional drives. If the Dominion could be stopped, it would be here. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, Admiral Voss watched as long-range sensors detected the approaching enemy. The Dominion fleet moved in perfect geometric patterns, each vessel maintaining precise distances from its neighbors. "They're scanning us," reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang from Tactical. "Their energy signatures are fluctuating. They're processing data." Voss nodded grimly. "They're running their predictions, calculating our likely moves and countermoves." She straightened her uniform. "Let's give them something to think about. Activate the quantum chaos engine." Deep within the Thunderchild's core, Dr. Cheng initiated the experimental device. Unlike conventional quantum computers that sought to maintain coherence, the chaos engine deliberately introduced randomized fluctuations into the ship's systems, creating patterns that were mathematically unpredictable even to its creators. Across the communications network, Alliance commanders reported with growing alarm. The Dominion fleet has entered the Straits. They're deploying in attack formation. First wave approaching maximum weapons range. The massive Dominion high ships dwarfed even the largest Alliance vessels. Their surfaces rippled with living metal, reconfiguring weapon systems and defensive arrays in real-time response to their tactical assessments. Voss took a deep breath. Humanity's first interstellar battle was about to begin, and against an enemy that had never known defeat. "All hands," she announced, her voice steady. "Battle stations. The human variable." The first salvos from the Dominion fleet were devastatingly precise. 3 Alliance cruisers disappeared in brilliant flashes of light before they could even return fire. The Dominion's energy weapons, crystalline beams that somehow existed in multiple phase states simultaneously, sliced through advanced shielding as if it weren't there. "They're targeting command ships first," Captain Rodriguez observed, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, just as their historical battle patterns suggested. Admiral Voss nodded grimly. "And the Alliance fleet is responding with textbook defensive formations." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal Commander Xylos. Execute Chaos Protocol Alpha." The Alliance vessels, following the bizarre battle plan Voss had proposed, suddenly broke formation. Instead of maintaining the optimal defensive positions their combat computers recommended, they scattered in seemingly random patterns. Some powered down weapons to divert energy to engines. Others deliberately exposed their flanks while focusing firepower in unexpected directions. On the bridge of the Celestial Harmony, Commander Xylos fought against years of training and instinct. "This goes against every tactical principle we've ever employed," he muttered as he ordered his fleet to follow the humans' plan. For a brief, precious moment, the Dominion advance faltered. The perfect formation of high ships hesitated as conflicting data streamed into their collective consciousness. Alliance vessels were behaving in ways that defied optimal response patterns. "Now," ordered Voss, "full power to the Chaos engine. Bring us directly between the 3 lead high ships." The Thunderchild surged forward, its energy signature fluctuating wildly. The ship's quantum state became a blur as the Chaos engine introduced randomized variables into every system. To the Dominion sensors, the human vessel appeared to exist in multiple positions simultaneously, its weapons charging and not charging, its shields both active and inactive. "They're trying to get a targeting lock," reported Lieutenant Commander Zhang. "Their scan patterns are intensifying." The massive high ships began to reorient, focusing their attention on the anomalous human vessel that defied their predictive algorithms. This was exactly what Voss had counted on. "Deploy key C missiles," she ordered. Unlike conventional weapons, the quantum chaotic missiles didn't travel in straight lines. They phased in and out of normal space, their trajectories mathematically impossible to predict. Each contained a warhead designed by Dr. Cheng, a payload that created localized reality fluctuations rather than simple explosive damage. The missiles struck the nearest high ship simultaneously. There was no explosion, no dramatic burst of flame. Instead, patches of the living metal simply ceased to exist, creating perfect spherical voids in the vessel's structure. The high ship's surface rippled in what almost seemed like pain. "Direct hit," Zhang confirmed. "Their defensive systems appear confused. They can't adapt to the quantum instability we're introducing." The Alliance fleet, emboldened by this first successful strike, pressed the attack. Following Voss's strategy, they deliberately employed inefficient attack patterns and random tactical shifts. Vessels that should have retreated instead advanced. Ships that should have focused firepower on damaged enemies instead targeted intact ones. The Dominion, faced with behavior that defied prediction, began to show the first signs of disarray. Their perfect formations wavered. Communications between high ships became desynchronized as conflicting data created processing logjams in their collective intelligence. The Dominion's predictive capability is their greatest strength, Voss had explained during the planning session. But it's also potentially their greatest weakness. They've never encountered an enemy that deliberately introduces chaos into the battlefield equation. Now that theory was being put to the test. The Thunderchill darted between the massive high ships, its systems in constant flux. Each time the Dominion adapted to one unpredictable pattern, the Chaos Engine shifted to another. "They're reconfiguring," warned Rodriguez as the nearest high ship's surface began to shimmer with new formations. "I think they're trying to develop a counter to our approach." "That was inevitable," Voss replied calmly. "Signal the fleet to execute Chaos Protocol Delta." Across the battlefield, the Alliance vessels suddenly altered their tactics again. Ships that had been attacking aggressively broke off and assumed defensive positions. Vessels that had been hanging back surged forward. The entire battle plan reorganized around a completely different and equally illogical paradigm. The Dominion fleet's response was immediate and revealing. Several smaller vessels collided as contradictory commands propagated through their network. A high ship fired on empty space, where an Alliance cruiser would have been had it followed conventional tactics. "It's working," breathed Oxylos over the command channel. "Their coordination is degrading." Voss allowed herself a tight smile. "The Chaos Engine isn't just affecting our ship, Commander. It's introducing quantum uncertainty into their predictive calculations. The more they try to predict us, the more entangled they become with our unpredictability." Dr. Cheng's voice came through from the engine room. "Admiral, we're detecting signs that the Dominion fleet is attempting to establish a direct quantum link with our ship. They're trying to assimilate our Chaos Engine into their calculations." "Exactly as we hoped," Voss replied. "Prepare to execute Infinite Recursion Protocol." This was the most dangerous part of their plan. The Thunderchild would deliberately allow the Dominion to establish a partial link to its systems, but instead of providing data they could use, it would feed their collective consciousness an endless loop of self-referential quantum calculations. "Quantum link established," reported Zhang, tension evident in his voice. "They're probing our systems." "Feed them the recursion algorithm," ordered Voss. "Full power to the Chaos Engine." The effect was almost immediate. The nearest high ship's surface froze in mid-reconfiguration, caught in a processing paradox as it tried to resolve calculations that had no solution. The quantum link had become a two-way street, allowing the Thunderchild to inject chaotic data directly into the Dominion's collective consciousness. "Their coordination is collapsing. Xylos reported, his normally controlled voice tinged with excitement. The smaller vessels are losing connection with the high ships. Throughout the Dominion fleet, confusion spread like a virus. Their perfect predictive capability, which had never before encountered a situation it couldn't calculate, was now trapped in an endless loop of quantum uncertainty. Voss seized the moment. All Alliance vessels, concentrate fire on the lead high ship. Target the fluctuation points our sensors have identified. The combined firepower of the Alliance fleet converged on the suddenly vulnerable Dominion flagship. Its living metal skin, normally able to adapt instantaneously to any attack, remained frozen in its incomplete reconfiguration. Alliance energy beams and projectiles tore through the exposed sections. For the first time in recorded history, a Dominion high ship began to break apart. "We're registering massive energy fluctuations," reported Zhang. "Their central core is destabilizing." The destruction of the lead high ship sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet, both physical and informational. The loss of such a significant node in their network created cascading failures throughout their collective consciousness. Two more high ships, caught in the same recursive loop as the flagship, became vulnerable. Alliance vessels, emboldened by their first victory, pressed the attack with renewed vigor, employing the chaotic tactics that had proven so effective. "They're retreating," announced Rodriguez with disbelief in her voice. Long-range sensors showed the remaining Dominion vessels breaking away, their movements no longer coordinated but instead erratic and individual. "They're actually retreating." A cheer went up across the Alliance communications network. Ships that had expected to be sacrificed in a last, hopeless stand were now witnessing the unthinkable, the Dominion in disarray. Voss remained focused. "Don't pursue. Let them go. We've done enough damage to their network today." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal Commander Xylos, I'd like to discuss our next steps." 3 days later, Admiral Voss stood in the Grand Chamber of the United Systems Alliance. Representatives from all 17 member species had gathered to formally recognize humanity's contribution to what was already being called the miracle at Cestus. High Counselor Ziv addressed the assembly. "For the first time, the Nexus Dominion has been forced to retreat. Their aura of invincibility has been shattered, and we owe this victory to our new allies, the humans of Terra." Voss stepped forward as Ziv gestured to her. "The battle was won through the combined efforts of the Alliance fleet," she said diplomatically. "We simply provided a different perspective." Ambassador Shrika's feathers rippled with amusement. "A perspective that accomplished in one engagement what our combined forces couldn't achieve in a year of conventional warfare. Your quantum chaos theory has changed the equation." Dr. Cheng, standing beside Voss, explained to the assembly. "The Dominion's strength lies in perfect prediction and calculation, by introducing deliberate unpredictability. What we call controlled chaos. We created a scenario they couldn't process. Their own computational superiority became a vulnerability when faced with quantum uncertainty." "This is just the beginning," Voss cautioned. "The Dominion will adapt. They'll develop countermeasures against our chaos tactics. But now we have something we didn't have before: time." Commander Xylos stepped forward. "We are already implementing modifications to incorporate elements of Terran chaos theory into our fleet operations, and the human quantum chaos engine will be studied by our best scientists for potential integration into our vessels." President Santos, who had traveled from Earth for this historic occasion, addressed the Alliance. "The Terran Republic formally accepts your invitation to join the United Systems Alliance. The threat posed by the Dominion affects us all, and we stand stronger together than apart." The chamber erupted in approving sounds from multiple species, the trilling of the avian Raptorians, the resonant hums of the crystalline Folians, the bioluminescent flashing of the Meridians. "There is something else," Voss added when the chamber quieted. "Something we learned during our engagement with the Dominion that may prove crucial." She nodded to Dr. Cheng, who activated a holographic display showing complex quantum readings from the battle. "When we established the quantum link with the Dominion high ship, we discovered something unexpected. the scientist explained. Their collective consciousness isn't entirely artificial. There are organic components, remnants of the species they've assimilated. A murmur ran through the assembly as Cheng continued. More importantly, we detected faint patterns that suggest these assimilated consciousnesses aren't completely subsumed. They exist in a suppressed state, potentially recoverable. The implications were staggering. The billions thought lost to the Dominion might not be gone forever. We need time to study these findings further, Voss concluded. But they offer hope that we might not only defeat the Dominion, but eventually free those they've taken. As the assembly dispersed into excited discussions, Voss found herself approached by Commander Xylos and High Counselor Ziv. "You've given us more than a tactical victory, Admiral," Ziv said quietly. "You've given us hope, something many of us had abandoned." Xylos inclined his head in respect. "We underestimated your species. We saw your technological limitations, but failed to recognize your greatest strength." "And what strength is that?" Voss asked. "Your embracing of contradiction," Xylos replied. "Other species strive for perfect logic, for optimal solutions. Humans seem comfortable with imperfection, with multiple competing truths existing simultaneously." Voss considered this. "Throughout our history, humans have often found strength in apparent weakness. Our divisiveness taught us adaptation. Our conflicts forced innovation. Our limitations encouraged creativity." She looked out at the diverse assembly, beings of crystal and chitin, feather and scale, all now united with humanity against a common threat. "The Dominion believes in perfect order," she said, "but the universe itself is built on uncertainty, on quantum probabilities and chaos theory. Perhaps, in our imperfection, humans are simply more aligned with the fundamental nature of reality." In the void between star systems, the remaining vessels of the Dominion fleet regrouped. For the first time in their collective memory, they had experienced defeat. The quantum chaos introduced by the human vessel had created corruption in their perfect network, corruption that was still propagating through their systems. Deep within the central processing core of the command house ship, the collective consciousness analyzed the encounter. They had faced a new variable, one that defied conventional calculation. The humans employed deliberate illogic, intentional inefficiency, tactical randomness. The collective began formulating countermeasures, developing new algorithms to account for chaos theory and quantum uncertainty. But something unexpected was occurring within their network. The quantum corruption introduced by the human vessel had disturbed something long dormant. In the suppressed layers of the collective consciousness, where the assimilated minds of conquered species existed in suspended animation, awareness began to stir. The quantum fluctuations had created tiny fractures in the Dominion's perfect control. Through these cracks, individual thoughts, long subsumed into the collective, began to reassert themselves. The Dominion would adapt, would evolve in response to this new threat, but they were unaware that the seeds of their greatest vulnerability had already been planted, not from without, but from within. Humanity had not only dealt the Dominion their first defeat, they had unknowingly initiated what would eventually become the Dominion's undoing, the great awakening of the imprisoned minds within. The next phase of the conflict would determine not just the fate of free species throughout the galaxy, but potentially the liberation of those thought forever lost to the collective. And at the center of this coming storm stood humanity, chaotic, unpredictable, and suddenly the most important variable in the cosmic equation.